Right, how do you do a really quick landscape of the type? Well, if you've got the picture I sent you, you'll know exactly what I mean. Um, Simple as this. Bit brown, add a bit more green to that. Actually, a bit grey. Oh, and just in case you're curious, Richard and William and Zorre. Now, who was at my 2-day event? No, William, you weren't there. It was Zorre and Richard. I was painting a snowscape, which is also somewhere around here, probably in the other room, and I ran out of Payne's grey, and I never did find it. So we went to the shop, and all they had in my regular store was small tubes, little dinky tiny, well, that to me is a tiny tube. And so I ordered them on Amazon, and now I have giant tubes. I won't run out of Payne's grey again. It was really embarrassing, that, because it meant that I couldn't really finish my snow. Anyway. Right, so here we are. There's a hill with a bunch of trees on the top. And then a slightly bigger one here. Now this one will be more in the foreground. And you'll see how I do that in a minute. And it's actually dead easy. At the moment, I mean, it does look as though this lot here is in front of that. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to put some light on the sky and then mix the sky color, and that will jump right back to, hopefully, just put that there, something, the way that effect is working there. And it does look as though there's a big drop behind this tree and then a long gap before you hit the hill at the back. And it's ridiculously easy to do. So let's have a gap there, same as the painting, another tree here. Okay. That's how easy it's going to be. And trust me, it will be this easy for you one day. Instant landscape. So bring the eye up from down here. So in the original, there's like a path coming up here. And then there's a hedge, a line of trees on the far side of this hedge, which is sort of like this. When you do stuff like this, for instance, the horizon, because of the nature of the way you hold a brush, you're always working on the top first. Don't worry about what's below the top. Does that make sense? So in other words, I'm putting a line of trees here, just exaggerate it a bit, make it slightly darker. Okay, so there's my line of trees. A little bit sticking up there, and a little bit sticking up here. Now, what's below that line is not important. And the reason is, I'll show you now, is because I'm going to do that through it. Okay, and then I'm going to do another line here, and I'm going to put a bit of tone in that area. So to put a bit of tone in, just take the paint that's already on there, push it around a bit. There isn't enough, put some on, push that around a bit, and you'll get a tone with some interesting things happening to it. And it'll be much more interesting, obviously, when I take the photograph. But that there looks like nothing. But on the screen, it looks like nothing. But on the painting, it looks interesting. Along with little things like this, just a little patch of darkness there, right? The we've got the line going up here, we've got the path. So this, if I do this, now notice it's the top edge that I'm sculpting, I suppose. Bottom edge doesn't matter because I'm going to do that with it. Okay, it's all in different layers. So this little lot here is in front of that lot, and it's all very rough at the moment, and that's what you want. You want it to be rough and ready to start with. So if I now take a load of red ochre, quite a lot of oil, because I want a bit of warmth in the land. So let's have a warmer color down here and watch how quickly the textures turn into something. So suddenly we've got a field there that's just earth or something. Well, it's going to be earth, isn't it? So let's just chuck that down there. So basically, I've filled up the area where I want the landscape to be. I'm not too happy about that dropping off there, but I can easily do something about that. And there we are. Now, this side of the brush here made those textures there. And actually looking at the screen, I quite like them. Let me put it this way. I'll show you again. If that was just flat, it's okay, but it's more interesting when something like that happens. Because I'm trying to recreate the mess that I had on there, see, because it was unconscious. It's just something that happened. For instance, if I do this a few times, maybe that'll illustrate what I'm trying to say. Suddenly there's something growing in there. You know, that's the idea anyway. It's a bit better. So it's, you know, it's your brain is now organizing what I put on there, I think. Hope so. Have another one here. Let's say we've got a, what have we got there? We've got a sort of darker area. I'm not quite sure what that is. Anyway, so if I just touch that on there a few times, let's see what that gives us. Yeah, who knows what it is? I don't. Let's lift that slightly. That seems to be more comfortable to my eye. Good. Now there could be, just find a decent bit of paper. There could be some lighter trees in front of this. And how do you do that? Well, you can get some lighter green, put it on a brush and start pushing it around in there. But what will happen is that it'll disappear into that color and you'll end up with just a pile of mud. So what you could do is put a lighter tree in front of those trees by not applying paint. So there's something going on there. Now you can leave that, let it dry, put another color on it. You can do anything you like with it. But the base needs cleaning up, like so. So there's something that's added a little something else to that bunch of trees. Let's have a lighter tree in there, maybe. And a couple of places, in fact. Just to gradually build up, you know, the oval patina. Got to get that word out of my head. Let's have a taller tree there for now. There may be something there. It's getting a bit lanky. Now, to get this effect where these trees fall back, what I have to do is mix a bit of white. Find a brush I can use. actually a slightly more fancy brush from the place I usually get all my stuff from in France, a Cultura shop, which sells everything the artist could possibly want. And for those who might be interested, this is a Manali number 40. I wouldn't have known unless I looked. I don't tend to notice things like that. If it's a brush, it's a brush. I don't care if it's a Dela, Rowney, or a whatever, so long as it does the job. So I've got some white paint. No oil added to this at all. All I'm going to do is just put some in the sky. Of course, you won't see anything because it's white on white. And I'm going up quite close to the green. I could touch the green, it wouldn't matter. That I'll do it, so no, it doesn't matter. There we go. The amount of green it picks up when I touch it is minimal, so it's not going to affect anything much. Okay, a bit more. This is a really cool effect that you're about to see. So let's just put that up there. Right, I'm not worried about that side yet. So the white paint is sitting above from that point there, across there. Now, if I get the same brush that I used to actually paint all of this in its entirety, if I just start to push this, into that, you can see it starting to go away, starting to recede into the background. And the really cool bit is when you do that, that really pushes it back. You must admit, it's a cool way, and it's quick. It's just a few brush strokes, and the effect is quite incredible. I could do that for. Tell you what, I'll do a bit more over here. Yes, that's what I'll do. Right, okay. So I'll do it the other way around though. I'll add the white and then put the landscape below it. So I'll keep this tree close to us, and I'll add another tree. So in other words, all I'm doing is putting some white on there. Need a tiny bit of oil. I seem to have hit a bit of white that's getting a bit dry. So there we go. Okay, so there's the paint you can't see. And then let's have a hill that comes up here. Behind there. That would take it across. Once I find something I like, you see, I have trouble letting go. Let's increase that a bit more. Now you notice that when I'm filling the white in that area, I'm not sort of doing this. Okay, I'm working from the top down and pushing against the edge like that, rather than dragging along it. It gives a much more interesting line, which you can probably just see. It's got a nice little broken effect there, but we'll lose that in a minute. Okay, I'm going to need white all the way along there, so I'll just sort of carry on for a moment. And then once the landscape's done, we can hit the sky, otherwise known as the easy bit. Okay, so we've got white all the way along. I could even use it to affect this main wood here, the large dark one, but I think I might leave that because it's sort of Just feels right. Okay, so all this white that's up here now is a good start for me to build the sky upwards. Okay, so we've got that slightly misty looking bit of a hill over there. So what I'll do, I'll bring this tree back, this copse, I suppose it's a copse. I'll bring that back later, but for the moment, I'm just going to continue that across to there. There we are, distant foggy hills. You see, it's instant perspective. It cannot not work. Nice double negative there, isn't it? It has to work because of the way we perceive stuff. Well, there's some misty hills. I'll do more work down here later, but I want to get on with the sky in a moment. But, I'm just going to show you what I mean by bringing that back. So I'm wiping all the white off the brush. They're all done with one brush, of course. Just literally just pulling it off. So if I get some sap green red ochre and a little bit of Payne's grey, because I want it to hold its darkness. Okay, so I can reform this edge if I want. Actually, it's quite nice, but I will. Okay, so we'll have a little bit of something there. Cool. Then the others. Okay, so I did that. Now I know that means that this bit of paint here is light, so I'm turning the brush over. So this side now has got dark paint on it. It's got a little bit of light, but not much. So let's just strengthen that tree lump, or whatever it is. There we go. Just before I get back to the sky, I just want to do a couple of things. Like, let's have check. My bristles aren't going to jump out. It's just for the heck of it. Just have a bump. Just there. See, it adds to the effect of detail, the illusion of detail. We could even have one there. Yeah, something there. Quite like that little extra bit of white poking down underneath too. Okay, so this stuff that I put here, it's sort of all right, but it's not wonderful. So I'm going to just simplify that just a touch. There we are, a few furrows in the land. Quite nice. Okay, down here, just to make it sort of interesting for now, I'm just going to do this because I think it needs it. As I make the, well, I hope they're coming across as sort of stripes across the land there. As I do the stripes that are up here, I use the brush that way. As I move down, I turn it so that I'm producing a bigger gap between the bristles. So in other words, turn the brush this way instead of that way. So that way for those, this way for these. And if you can't do it because of the shelf on your easel, work from the bottom upwards, just a couple of touches, just to give the, the overall impression that there's something still there that's sort of right. Okay. Right. Sky. I will do more work down here. That's a bit of a blank area there. See what happens there? That line comes across and it doesn't really go anything and it doesn't sort of state anything. So if you have an area like that, I'll just show you a quick way to fix it and then I'll start working on the sky. And that is to just hide the end. Let the brain try and figure out what's going on behind that. Okay, a lot easier than you know, trying to get something right and just making a mess. Simplify the problem and then forget the problem. Well, something there too. But anyway, I'll sort of come back to that. Right, sky. So I need the white brush. Move the camera slightly. Should be about right. Okay. Right, this has got, what's it got? It doesn't really matter what it's got. If it's got blue and grey and white, you can do anything with that. Absolutely anything. So this is going to be an interesting colour. Right, one thing that I always like to do with people is to give them confidence. So I'm going to exercise a bit of confidence, showing off, I suppose. Actually, you know, before I go on, looking at that, I prefer what you're just seeing now with it cropped here. I like the fact that that's a really slim bit of landscape. I don't think the bit below it is necessary, funnily enough. And I do have a saw in the garage, so maybe I'll alter it slightly. Now this is a bluey greyish, quite nice colour actually. Just going to slap it on. Right, let's put that across there. Now already, before I do much, you can see that it's mixing with the white that I'd already put on there. It's exactly what we want. And I can just sort of strengthen it a bit. Like so. In fact, you know, that's quite nice. Now, what happens when I do this? So I'm holding the brush, as you can see, and all I'm going to do is just sort of do a circular motion into the white. Okay, starts to look even more like a sky. And above that, let me just put my hand on it, see where you can see. You can see to that point. Okay, I'm going to just show you the top. Good, you can see that. Same brush, again, I'm not going to do anything to it. All I'm going to, you know, I'm not going to wipe it or anything like that. I'm just going to get some ultramarine blue. A bit of oil, because with skies, I like the paint to be thin. So ultramarine blue, one of the nicest blues ever invented. So let's have a little bit of that there. So it's not pure ultramarine. This is ultramarine with everything else that was on the brush, but not the green. This is a separate brush from the land. General shapes. Okay, so I know that there's going to be a white cloud up against that. What I don't want to do is actually paint the edge of a white cloud. It's a complete waste of time. Don't need to do it. So there's a little bit of what I call something for later. And let's have another little bit there. So as you can see, careful, precise marks. Where else do we want it? I think there might be a little bit there. Oh, there's a hair. Yep. Right, let's have a little bit there. Right, so that can just sort of sit for a moment. Now, in between all that, we're going to have some whites and greys and things like that. When I find my palette knife, Actually, the other day, I did have a sudden flash of inspiration to tidy my studio. And I thought, really, I've got to do something about this. It's anyone who has been, well, I know Lindsay, you've been here, Zori, you've been here. It's quite untidy. Anyway, I had this real strong flash of, let's get this organized. And then I forgot about it. Okay, so there's a bit of slightly paler blue there. Let's see how that looks. It's coming on, good. You see skies are a bit like what we were talking about earlier, about the tree limb. This is a sky that, obviously I've got a painting in front of me for reference. Not that I particularly need it because I'm not copying it. But it doesn't matter what you do, it'll be a sky. And the trick, or one of the tricks, is the way you brandish your brush. In other words, you will never see me hold a brush like that, okay? It's like that, usually, for various reasons. Well, it's a better grip. I know if I start painting like this and get into my usual furious mode, the brush will fly around the room, so that's not safe. But it's the type of brush stroke like this. Just do that. And if I do that, you'll see that has a life to it. It creates a movement. It's like there's a strong movement that way, right? But without just doing straight lines. It's actually got motion. And it's just add a flourish to all your brush strokes. And if you come up with a grey like that, now that's quite an interesting grey there. It's a lot more stormy here than it is on your screen. It's actually quite a nice, threatening sort of sky. I'm going to just add a little bit more threat just there, I think. So all these marks that you can see, you're probably seeing lots of brush marks. Of course, they will go once I start doing the dry brush routine. Still want more grey in that sky. In fact, I'm just going to point you down a bit. There we are. So let's go for the dark, threatening sky hanging over the landscape, which will enhance this effect because it's going to be very light at the bottom, like you're under a shelf of clouds. And right really close to the horizon, you have this sort of belt of light. That's the effect I want to give. Okay, that's coming along, still not quite at the level I want. So what I'm going to do is add brown. Interesting effect. If you really want to get into understanding color and what happens when you add certain colors to other colors, like blues and grays, you add brown to it. It doesn't mean it's going to go red. It's a reddish brown, obviously. Red ochre. It's the only brown I use. I don't use any of the umber colors, burnt umber, raw umber, or even burnt sienna. Just red ochre mixed to this dove grey color gives you interesting clouds. Okay, so that's looking quite threatening now. And here's another thing that works quite well. See now, what I did here, you'll see it again on the photo, but there's a little bit of cloud there. And that little bit of cloud actually has a lot of life in it. It suddenly receded behind that bit of cloud by about 5 miles, just by letting a bit of light into it. I quite like that. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do, just change the shape of it because the shape isn't quite right. But if I just work on that with a bit of paper, not that bit though. Right, the paper that's flat. Okay, so just sort of get a flat area. Now, if I take paint away there, yeah, that starts to sort of, and if you wipe, I always say this, I always repeat, but because I wiped it with this bit of paper here, and I picked up some paint, I wouldn't use that again. I'll find a new bit to lighten it even further. So if I do that, I can sort of, if I find a clean bit again, is where you start to get it all over your hand. There's something interesting happening in the sky. Now, what I'm going to do, because I like that, I'm just going to sort of roughly do that all the way along. Okay. That's quite brave about it. Okay. Definitely whipping up a nice sort of storm now. But this will change, you see. When I go over it with a dry brush, it will change and become even more interesting and subtle. And down the bottom edge, the other thing I'm going to do again, piece of, using that surface on the paper, I'm just going to sort of pull some of the white clouds up into the blue. Doesn't matter about the marks that I'm making. Actually, it looks like stylized sea, doesn't it? But it won't. And just for the heck of it, I have to put something up there. I'm fond of the saying, something for later, but it actually does help. It just sort of builds up. Let's put another one there. And let's have something here, I think. Now you can see all kinds of little strands of paint. That's just temporary. Everything's temporary. Okay, so another bit there. Oh, yeah. Right, let's see now. What am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to start putting white paint on there. Now, should we do it with a big brush or a small brush? I think a small brush. Okay, so I'm going to do the white on the sky with this brush, which is 3 centimeters in width, which is just over an inch, about 1.25 inches maybe. I'm going to add, am I going to add oil? No, I'm not. So this is just white paint, no oil at all. And this is where the life comes into it, that sort of effect. Okay, so it's only a tiny little bit, but that's the sort of attitude you want to get into your brush strokes. And trust me, it works. Let's have don't tidy the edges into little bumpy bubbles. It's more cloud-like when you do what I've just done. In other words, yep, just be rough with it. I'm just going to add a bit more up here because I think I just like the idea of a nice bit of dark up there. And you see the top? No. I think you can now. Good. Okay, so this is royal blue, ultramarine, Payne's grey, white, bit of everything. Bit of red ochre. Now, what I'm going to avoid this. Now, you may think that looks actually quite interesting just there, but it's a little bit flat. Yep. I don't want flat, so I'm going to bring some of this dark stuff here up to it. Change the top of that a bit. Chuck a load on there. Let me see, over there. Okay, let's have a lump there. A little bit more brown, a bit more of everything, really. Royal blue, red ochre, ultramarine. And in fact, let's have a lump of Payne's grey, because I now have more Payne's grey than the art shop. I was so desperate when I ran out of Payne's grey the other day, when I went to the shop and bought the little tubes of paint. I also bought, for the first time in my life, never bought it before, I bought a big tube of black. And I thought, well, in emergencies, I could turn black into Payne's grey. Wouldn't be difficult. I'll get rid of those spots in a minute. Okay, so let's have more grey there. And as you can see, it's quite sticky paint. You can tell it's sticky because if I do that, you see, it hardly leaves any paint. I've really got to push it. So I don't have too much oil. It's thin, but it's got a bit of stickiness to it. Right, so there we are. Let's just sort those out now while we got it. There we are, that's good. This is a good basis now for a sky. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a bit of that there. That stops it just being a line. So you don't want just lines. Take a little bit up there. So it's a bit of everything now. Same brush, just added a bit of white to the edge here. Coming along. I'm looking for the wildlife that always turns up. Some kind of dog thing. Get rid of that. Okay. Don't know where that came from. Okay, now what I'm going to do next, put that brush down. I'm going to move this camera down a little bit. I think you can see most of what I'm going to do. So the next step is a dry brush. Never been used before. It's always a good, if you can, use a completely clean brush to start with. It's not a very big one. I've given up I used to buy them look like this wide, but you don't actually need it. So this is the smoothing out process. So everything on here has got paint on it. And all I'm going to do is a bit of this. So it's this movement, okay? A little bit flamboyant with the wrist. Hardly touching it. Okay, so it's picked up a tiny amount of paint, hardly anything. So every now and then, just give it a wipe. About 4 or 5 sweeps. Now, if you want to change something, I'm just going to show you what I'm talking about here. Right. So I want to blend the paint, well, smudge it, not blend it. But every now and then you may think, I'd like to just change something. So what? Don't be afraid to do this. Just using the corner. So down here, I've got a rogue brush mark or so that I don't want, but I'm not going to worry too much about those at the moment. But if I want to break this line that's across here, I might not. I mean, it's okay. But suppose I don't like complete lines, you see, that go right across. So what you could do is you could just sort of force a bit of paint up just to break it slightly. It just seems to make it, I like the sky to be unpredictable, because that's what the weather is, isn't it? Really, it's totally unpredictable. There's a bit of a line there too. So just sort of mush that area and sweep over it a couple of times, and lose the brush mark. So down right in there, got a rogue hair there. I'll leave it because you probably can't even see it. So down in here again, just a few touches, just to, I want to get this speckled look to go away. See these dark spots every now and then? Don't quite want them. So I'm just touching them in the corner. Well, that hair is bugging me slightly. Get off. Well, it's still there, but there you go. Now then. Let's see. Right, so in a minute I'll be doing a bit of palette knife to make the clouds slightly more interesting. So we've got this brown, this red ochre that I put in there. Don't like that at all. But I also want to get a tiny bit of red, Japanese red. So I've turned that into a darker spot. I think that's okay there. Right, so over here, what do we want now? We've got this here. We've got this sort of channel working across the painting. And we've got it coming up here. Now, what I don't want to do, actually, it's good to tell people what you don't want to do, apart from what you do want to do. What I'd like is some more of this here, but I don't want to do a copy of that over here. So I'll leave that. I'll leave this bit here and just sort of darken up there. That's not quite worked, but a bit more. Okay, so I think it will just carry the viewer up into the sky, so to speak. I do this. Okay, and I'll smooth that down in a minute. Don't like that. Might be better. A little bit of dark just there. Oh, I think a lot of dark just there. It's borderline now. There's a limit to how much paint, oh, you can't see it. There's a limit to how much darkness I can add to that because it's wet. But I just added this bit here. I mean, I could just sort of go slightly berserk and just pile a whole load of grey on that. See what it does. It may actually make it look quite nice. Oh, that, yeah. Right, so that's nice and chunky. And then a little bit of blending. Keep saying blending. It's not actually blending. It's blurring. I've got a few lumps in the paint here. It's left over from the other day. Okay. Right. Please tell me that that's not a dog looking straight at us. You've got the snout, there's an ear, there's another ear. I'm going to have to de-dogify that. Okay, a little bit of light, I think. Right, it needs it there, I think. Oh, good grief, it's even more dog-like. Take a bit up there. Oh, well, it'll just have to stay doggy. Okay, now. Quick swipe or two with that. Right, next stage, I want to go back to the landscape. And I'll just give you a quick glimpse of the landscape. And in fact, if I could, I'd probably cut it off about there. That would be all the landscape that I would actually want in that painting, I think. Anyway, back to the start. Okay, so palette knife. And what this is for is just hopefully, although I have to say on the screen it looks quite bright. You know, that's actually that isn't, funnily enough, that isn't pure white. It looks like it on my screen. You may be seeing the same thing, but it's you know, not quite there. If I put a bit of white on there, you'll see the difference. Okay, good. So I'm going to add a few really light bits of cloud. So let's have something there. Okay. Once you've added the paint like that, you see your knife will end up that color, which you don't want. If you're adding white, the palette knife has to be wiped between each application so that you end up only putting on white paint. Okay, let's have just for the heck of it, let's have a tiny little bit of light there. Now this is like a very light touch, but you're changing the pressure as you do it. So, but already you see that's turned into a grey. I'm not going to worry too much down here because it's actually on a very dark bit of cloud, so I'll be able to get a nice effect from that. On a little bit of something going across there. And you can't see that, so I'm going to move back just a touch. Okay, that's good. Now, let's have a little bit there. All these marks that I'm putting on are going to change. Okay, let's do a little bit there. So now you can see how white really is next to what looked like white before. And that's just a little bit there. And well, I think we should have probably a little something here. So before I do any more, I'm going to do a bit of blending on that. Then again, blending, blurring. Okay, off we go. Don't come together. Now, you may see as I do that, for instance, here, if I'll exaggerate it. If I do that, right, so you see lines in the paint. Now, I don't actually mind them because it does sort of give the slight illusion of a bit of hazed light, I suppose. And I actually like the effect. So across there, for instance, see there's some lines here. If they're a bit too strong, you can fix them just by going in a different direction. So if I go up like that, it sort of disperses them a bit. But I do actually like the effect. Now, in some places, you may just see it. You can tell the paint's really thick there. And I'll show you what you do with that, because it's actually quite a useful thing. The fact that it is thick, let me find a clean palette knife and I'll explain it better. What you can do then is you can alter it by just flattening it, and you get another hit of white. If you see what I mean. So let's do another bit. There's some here. So if I touch that and flatten it a little bit, you can see it goes quite light again. And the same along there. There's a little bit down in that area, so I'll just sort of push that a bit. Who would have believed you could make clouds out of a piece of steel? Quite bizarre. So that's flattened out nicely. That needs dispersing a bit. Okay, back to the blurring machine. Yeah, reasonable cloud. Something is bugging me slightly. This little lot here, I think that could look interesting if I just do this. Yeah, that's not so bad. I've done worse. Now, see, let's have a look at the whole thing. I can get it. You have to realize when I say that, I have to stand with my back to the computer, dislocate my neck to look behind me. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll start with the land. I'll do a bit more on the land in a moment, but there's the land and sky. Okay, and I'll just gently move it up so you can get an idea of the sky. Way up there. And in fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Right, it needs something way up the top. So the first thing I'm going to do is put some white on using a brush. Which one should we use? That one. Okay, so this is a square-ended brush. So this is how to use a square-ended brush, but not make square-ended marks. And that is to not do that, okay? Get rid of the loose hair. Even the slightly more expensive brushes lose hairs occasionally. Right, so the way you do it, I want to just make a bit more white cloud at the top there. And that is to just use the edge. So, okay, that'll probably do it. That's not staying like that though. So, okay, so the big brush again. So how do you turn a bunch of literally scribbled on white into a cloud? And it's just that simple as that. Turns into a cloud. small bits, in bigger bits. Okay, that brings it up over your head. If the clouds don't appear to go over your head, it just won't work. You always have to keep that in mind. But you are looking, in fact, if you imagine this is the land is a piece of paper. Okay, so there's the land. Imagine this is, I'm going to demonstrate this. I've done this before actually, but I think it's worth seeing it again. Excuse me when I get in front of the camera. Okay, all right, think of it this way. That's all one piece of paper. This is the best way to describe perspective. So if I have this piece of paper here like this, and I fold it, and then look at it like that, this is the land, this is the sky. What the sky does not do is that. So if you imagine you're standing where my finger is, looking that way, the sky actually comes over your head. It's not a backdrop in a theatre. It's like you're looking into a wedge shape. So there's the bottom of the wedge, and then there's the crease, and then it comes back over your head here. So that's a good way to think about it. So if you can get that effect of bringing this bit here closer to as it goes up the picture, you can't go wrong. And in fact, what I'm going to do to make it even more is, am I going to use this brush though? Okay, so I've got a brush that's got pale blue on it. That can be a waste of time. I think it might be a waste of time. Get a clean brush. Okay. Well, actually, I can use this one. Right. Okay. I'm using this square-ended thing. There's two ways of doing it. One is to darken the top, because dark comes towards you, or lighten it. And lighten it big time. What's going to be the easiest? Right. I think the easiest way, the most effective way, excuse me, is to just increase the width of this light area here. So if I just do that, big shapes getting smaller, getting smaller, getting smaller. Okay, simple as that. It starts to come over your head. Blending brush. That's a first. Found it straight away. Now I was going to put some red in the sky. I'm not sure that I will actually. It may be, because there's so much paint on it, it may be a glazing job when it's dried. But anyway, there's a bunch of clouds up the top there. The hair's escaping today. I think the reason I've got a lot of hairs dropping out of my brushes is because I went into the hardware store the other day. I was in a hurry trying to get my car fixed, and I just grabbed a load of brushes without doing the usual process of getting the hairs out. In other words, don't buy the brush that's going to lose too many hairs. But anyway, there we are. I think that might be it. For the sky, anyway. Actually, you know, very tempted to put some red in that. Give me 20 seconds to think about this. Yep, let's do it. So, you can either use Japanese red or the one that I can reach across my palette. Oh no, it is Japanese red. I thought I was picking up vermilion. Okay, Japanese red. Just get the white paint off the outside of the tube. All right, so now the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to apply it with my blending brush. And for the whole painting, the amount that I'm using is less than you can get in the lid. Tiny amount, it goes a long way. So there's going to be an interaction between the red and the grey. It'll make it look darker. So I'm just going to wipe my brush just to minimize that effect a little bit. So if I just put some, for starters, you may not even see it, but there's a tiny amount of red on the tip of that. So let's just see what happens when we put it in there. Yep, good. Is it even worth it? Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I suppose that's okay. What else could we do? Let's have a little bit down there. Let's oh yeah, that's good. Adds a bit of warmth. Right, so it's gone from the brush now. There's a minute part, a bit of red showing there, but not so as you've noticed. Let's just add a bit more there. See, this once this is dry, it'll be much easier to add this red as a glaze. But it is possible, you know, to do it while it's wet. Let's just have a little bit of something coming out there. Like the wind has caught the really high clouds, you know, that sort of effect. I don't really know. It's an interesting thought. If you add lines to paintings that do this sort of lifting, it is uplifting to the mind when you see it. You have a painting that's got all diagonals, it's usually a painting of something tragic. And if you want sad, it's just lines that sweep down. Interesting. Yeah, I think that, you know, something affecting the gap between the main cloud and the blue sky, having those little distant bits, I think that's quite nice. A little bit of movement there. I think we'll have a little bit across that. Whoops. Now, if you have a whoops moment, you know, where you put the wrong color on, some people will start wiping away and scraping, and you really don't need to do it. You just sort of, you know, doing what I'm doing with this basically very dry brush. It's got staining on it, but it's not a massive amount of paint. So you make a mark like that. Now you probably can't see much, but trust me, there's a big grey smudge hitting that cloud, and it's just not right. But you know, it'll go with just a few of these. And then what I want to do is just lift some of that light and just push it up that way. And I don't know why. It's just one of those things. Okay, that works reasonably well. I think we could even do a little bit flying off the top of this cloud here. Touch. Right. That needs something doing to it. And let's see, that's sort of okay, I suppose. But what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go down to the land. And actually, I'm not kidding. I'm seriously considering cutting the bottom off the painting. Not today. That would be messy. But yeah, every time I see it there, about there, whoops, too much. Try again. About that point, I think that's all the landscape it actually needs, but I'll try and make more out of what we've got. It's okay, I suppose. Maybe I should leave it. Let's see, what should we do? Let me have a little think out loud. Now, the painting that I'm going to give to Lindsay, I think it works well on that because I haven't got too much landscape. But this one, I'm not happy with it. I think this is all unnecessary. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Some people cringe when I do this, but there you go. I think I'm going to just do this. Okay. This is what you have to be prepared for, this sort of stuff. Well, actually, you know, I could turn that into a flyover, couldn't I? There's a motorway going through it. But what I'm after is, I think, just literally a line. And then let's see what happens when we do this. Big sweeping field in the foreground. How about that? And there's a guy standing there with a shadow. Not really supposed to be that, but we'll lose that. What else should we do? Let's try. Until you do stuff like this, you won't know what you can do. If you hit the right bravery level. So yeah, I think actually I might stop there, put my hand away and move the camera. Try and move the camera. I think, ooh, too far. So let me see. Right, let's assume I'm only going to go to that level. And then I'm going to, as soon as it's dry, get it in the garage and chop it. So let's see what we can do to make that a little bit more interesting down in the foreground. So let's have some slightly more green. Now, it is quite green, but this is greener. So I'm just going to do that, see what that does. Okay, like that. Nice streak of light across the land. Let's try and get that slightly flatter. Like I've got a hump in the middle. Don't want that. I'm sorry, I'm probably in the way, but one of the hardest things to do is a horizontal line, unless you're standing in the middle of the painting. Still not right. I like that little light spot, see? What should we do? What shall we do? Let's try, okay, I know, right. What happens if I do this a few times? What texture will we get if I do that? Yeah, that's better. Okay. Now, if I make a mess of that pale line, it doesn't matter because I can just pull that back. What I'm more interested in is some kind of texture on this green foreground. And I think that might be it. Okay, so now I'll just go back. And do something to that line. So make paper like that. I'm sorry about getting in the way, I may have to, but difficult not to when you're doing something like this. So what I might do, right, I'll try and show you as much as I can. I'm going to start on the brightest part and move to the right. And then continue it across. Exactly what we want. Now, the bit that I'll saw off will be below this point. Anyway, the point that you can see where my well, in fact, what you're seeing on my screen is probably the same, isn't it? So if I just get some sap green and red ochre, all I'm going to do is break the line in a few places. Before I do that, I'm going to strengthen this tree and that. And that. Okay, that's good. I have another one there. I think something this side of this divide. So there could be something that breaks it just there. Bigger one, so that you can see through it in a few places. That's cool, good. And this is looking a bit dull down here now, so I think we'll just, in fact, I'll tell you what, I'm going to build these trees up higher. And I'm going to break that point there. Excuse me. Another one there, another one there. But there, I think we'll start to fill up that space. That's good. And then over the other side, I've got this little squat bush sitting there with a funny object next to it, which I don't like. So we'll get rid of that in a minute. But I think that just needs to break up that bit there. And then just by pushing the brush down that way, you see you get instant tree trunk. Don't even have to paint a tree trunk. They just appear. I'll do another one. So they're almost. Okay, right. It's quite a surreal landscape, isn't it? I think that's it. I'm going to get rid of that little spot, and then I think that's it. And it's just a question of doing that. And then just for interest, let's put a few things like, I have no idea what they are, but you know what I mean? They're just sort of things for your brain to rationalize, I suppose. That looks a bit lonely up there on its own, doesn't it? Okay. Quite surprised at how grey that looks there, but it isn't. You'll see when I photograph it in a minute. So let's have a couple of thingies there. I think we're almost done. Problem with me, see, I get to this stage in painting and I don't want it to end, but I just want to keep going. But more disciplined. Let's put a bit of light on that tree there. That doesn't work, does it? So I'll take that off. In fact, now I look at this here, I don't know that I like those. So that can come off, that can come off. That might work like that. So there we are, I think that's it now. I'm going to stop. So there we are. I'll take a photograph now and show you all, and hope you enjoyed it. See you in a moment.